Welcome to Wisconsin in Focus. I'm JD Davidson. States across the country seem to do poorly on some financial report or another. And for Wisconsin, that was the case until several years ago when things started to take a turn. Now, a new report paints a very rosy picture in terms of the state finances. Joining us today is Ben Yount, Wisconsin contributor for the Center Square. Ben, tell us more about this report and what it says about Wisconsin.
This is the latest great financial snapshot for the state of Wisconsin. And it is interesting that we're an hour and a half from the Illinois border and yet light years away from that state when it comes to what we owe, the ability of state government to pay its bills, and in general, the economic outlook. This is a report from the Wisconsin Policy Forum, a nonpartisan think tank, truly in the sense of nonpartisan. Now, whenever you have people writing about state government, there tends to be an insular view of, well, if it's good for state government, then it's good for state government, right? And the Policy Forum has done a pretty good job of staying out of the really obvious hacking for one side or the other. But the quote to lead the story overall, Wisconsin's finances ended 2023 in outstanding fashion. Wisconsin has improved its fiscal condition substantially since the Great Recession years, a period marked by severe budget challenges in which the state raised taxes or cut aid to school and local governments, delayed debt payments, decreased benefits, and take-home pay for both state and local workers. And if you go down that list, Wisconsin has absolutely turned around. There have been no tax increases in Wisconsin in the past decade. Wisconsin has sent more money to public schools in the state year after year and year on year for the past decade or so. Local governments are getting more money. That the state is paying its debt and paying its bills. And up until the recent national inflation, you saw wage growth here in Wisconsin. And Republican lawmakers at the Capitol have been saying for years that this is all a result of the reforms that they made back during 2011, which is, well, like we continue to say, little over a decade ago.
My first question was going to be, is anybody taking credit? But I assume everybody is taking credit.
Yeah. And this, what do they say? Defeat is an orphan and success has many fathers. I posted this story on Twitter and I received a flood from Democratic voters here in Wisconsin, supporters of the governor, Joe Biden voters, who flooded my inbox with, well, if you take a look at the reports and the massive federal stimulus that the president signed, that's responsible for improved financial conditions in almost every state. And that's true. I mean, Wisconsin got billions of dollars from Washington, D.C. for COVID relief, though that money went to everything from growing the size of state government to paying for minor league baseball in Eau Claire. But it is true. One of the reasons why Wisconsin has a $3 billion budget surplus and another $2 billion rainy day fund is because there was a massive influx of federal money, and Wisconsin, like most states, didn't spend it all. But there's this that is key, and this is why we put it so far up in the story. The quote from the report said the state's long-term liabilities grew as a share of assets during the 2000s, peaking at 41.2% of assets in 2011. Since then, they have fallen to a share of just over 30%, though that was up slightly from the year's previous record of 28.4, still one of the lowest percentages in 2 decades. Now, 2011 is a key year. That was Act 10. That was when the Cheesehead Revolution rolled in, and you had Governor Scott Walker, who replaced Jim Doyle, who was a spending Democrat in the governor's office. That's when Wisconsin got a handle on its pension debt. And long-term liabilities and debt to asset ratio, that's not just money in the bank. That's not just your day-to-day ability. That's not just tax returns. That gets to the point of the things that are bankrupting Illinois and Kentucky and New Jersey, which is both Medicaid and pension debt. And when you take a look at what Act 10 did, is it severely limited the future pension promises that teachers would always get. Teachers unions in this state and teachers themselves are still salty about that. But from a fiscal health condition, from just a snapshot of what that did, it knocked 11 points off of Wisconsin's long-term liability as share of assets numbers. And that's one of the things that is driving the excellent financial condition. The other is tax cuts. And Wisconsin Republicans have been pushing tax cuts almost every single year since 2011, and much to the chagrin of Democrats in Madison. And even the past 2 or 3 years with a Democratic governor, they've gotten some small income tax decreases, but they've also pitched massive, flat tax plans or a plan to return $2.5 billion to taxpayers. And so when you take a look at just how well Wisconsin's sitting financially, you have to draw the line of pre-Cheesehead Revolution in 2011, and then what's happened since, when the state's finances have, gotten into far better shape.
Being able to lower that pension debt is so critical. It is also so unsexy. My buddies down the street at the bar, if I bring up pension debt, they have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. But if you kind of group the Midwest states, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, for the most part, they're relatively close to being the same state. Look at the 3 states that over the last year have turned around population. More people are coming to Ohio. Wisconsin is stable. Indiana is growing. Look at the states that are struggling, that are losing folks, losing jobs, losing companies. The states that are starting to stabilize this pension debt are growing.
I spent a decade plus covering the Illinois capital, watching as that state went through some of its terrible pension struggles. And for every dollar that you have to spend on a retirement promise, that's one less dollar that you get to spend on schools, one less dollar you get to spend on roads, one less dollar you get to spend anywhere. And when you add that up, and these costs are in the billions, you're looking at some states that are spending 20, 30%, maybe not 30%, but certainly in the 20% range of their state budget only on retirements. And then you break that down even further, and really the big beneficiaries are a couple of 100,000 state employees and teachers. And so now you're looking at this, and $1 in $5 is going to pay for the retirement of just a handful of people. And then you add into that the Medicaid liabilities. Wisconsin, again, remember, a state that has not expanded Medicaid, unlike Illinois and Michigan and Minnesota. And now what you're looking at is most new dollars that are coming into states, at least this was before the massive COVID flux, all of those dollars were being tied up for pensions and health care for poor people, or in the case of Illinois, illegal immigrants in the country. And that's why you take a look at some of these states and they just don't have the money for public schools or for universities or for road projects or to build the new hospital or build the new prison or build the new whatever. And Wisconsin was able to get a hold of its long-term fiscal health by getting a hold of its pensions. And it is unsexy. It's very unpopular with people who are going to get one of those pensions. But as this report points out, it is absolutely necessary if you want to set the state up to weather what could be another recession or just continuing inflation. Wisconsin is in a far better position as a state to handle that $3 billion surplus, $2 billion rainy day fund than, say, a state like Illinois or Kentucky or New Jersey or California.
Well, hopefully in a year, we'll see another report that looks just as bright. Ben, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.
Knowledge is power, and you deserve to know what happens in your state government. That's why the Center Square's reporting zeroes in on state authorities publishing stories that show where your money goes and who spends it. The Center Square gives power to the taxpayer by tracking politicians' use of the people's money and demanding transparency from state-run agencies. This is how the Center Square equips you, the American taxpayer, to hold your state government accountable. Sign up now for your state's Center Square newsletter at thecentersquare.com.